Get ready for Hosts at Home. On today's show, imagine this. It's 1975, and this man helped change game shows forever. The original host of Wheel of Fortune and so many others, Chuck Woolery joins us. And now, here's your host who interviews the host, Adam Wurtzel.
Thank you, Richard Malmus. Hi, everybody. I'm Adam Wurtzel. Welcome once again to Hosts at Home. Folks, I am pumped about this. Our guest today, known for shows like Lingo, Love Connection, Greed, the list goes on and on. He was the original host of Wheel of Fortune, but more importantly, and you will never hear me say this ever again on this show, he hosted my favorite game show of all time. From Scrabble, Chuck Woolery is here. Chuck, nice to see you.
Hi, nice to see you, Adam. Scrabble was one of my favorite shows, too. Scrabble is one of those games. I've always done something in my career that has been interesting to me, and that is every word game that I've ever done has been successful, starting with Wheel of Fortune, Scrabble, and Lingo. Now, the other Love Connection and those things were more of hosting, a different kind of show, almost a talk show with one subject. But the game shows have always been the word shows that show the strength, and people love them, and I understand why.
Do you like to play word games? Do you play crosswords at home?
I'm terrible at it. My mother was like a genius. She was a what do you call a bridge player that's just one of these people who are just genius bridge players. She was one of those. And she played Scrabble and all these things. I was terrible at all that stuff. My sister was good at it, but not me. But I would just stand back and say, well, why don't you do this? And we'll be back in a minute.
Well, Chuck and I will talk more about Scrabble a little bit later on in the show. But first, we always like to ask, because it is Hosts at Home, where is home for you?
Home for me in the last 12 years has been a little place in the center part of Texas. I literally live in the heart of Texas, called Horseshoe Bay. And it's about 60 miles northwest of Austin, I live just outside of Weird. And I've been here for quite a while. I actually came here to do a commercial, and they hired me to come in and do this for this area. And I woke up one morning and I thought, holy cow, what is this and why is it here? I'll give you an example. It's the closest little town is a town of 5,000 people. It's about 10 minutes away. The area that I live in is very, very small. It has the largest private airport in the state of Texas. I mean, does that tell you anything? It's like Bel Air on the lake.
Wow. And by the way, I want you to write a country song called Just Outside of Weird. I think it would be huge. Did you move to that vicinity specifically because of fishing?
I came down here and bought a house as a second home to bring my children to play on the boats in the summer and to bass fish and put my boat underneath the house, which I did. And that was the primary reason. And once I was here for about 3 weeks, I was here putting in refrigerators and stoves and, stuff that you need, washers and dryers, and getting the house set up. And I thought to myself, well, what if I lived here and liked it? Could I actually still fly back and forth and do Lingo? Because I was doing Lingo at the time. And I went, sure, why not? I mean, I'll just fly in for a couple of days and come back out. Because when you do shows like game show hosts do, you normally work 2 days a week. So you have an awful lot of time off and a lot of breaks. And sports, especially since you're in the syndication world, which is only 38 or 49 or 40 weeks a year. So you have an awful lot of spare time. So, I could handle this. And so I just didn't go back. I stayed here, and that was, 12 or 13 years ago.
A lot of the iconic game show hosts got their start as disc jockeys, but you were kind of the exact 180. You were the one being played on the radio. Tell everybody about that.
Yeah, when I came here from Nashville, I had no idea what I was going to do in LA. I didn't have a clue. In fact, John Wayne asked me once when I met him the third day I got to LA, and I was playing in a tennis tournament. And a woman came over to me. I have to tell you the whole story. It just doesn't work. But a woman came over to me and she said, I know your girlfriend, Joanne. And she said that you're going to be free for the next hour. Would you help me do something? And I had no idea who she was. And I said, yeah, sure. Okay. So she said, well, go with me in my car. She had this, not a van, but a station wagon. And she said, I have to go to my dad's house and get a piece of furniture and help me put it in the car. And then I'm fine. And you can go back and play the rest of the tennis tournament. So he went to her dad's house, knocked on the door. John Wayne answered the door. I mean, can you imagine? I've been in town 3 days, and I'm at John Wayne's front door. And he said, "Come on in." And she said, "Well, Daddy, you entertain Chuck. I've got to go look at this piece and see exactly how we're going to do this." He said, "That's fine." So we came in. So we had a long conversation. I liked him instantly, and I think he liked me. We became friends over the years. But he asked me, he said, "Now, what are you doing here in Los Angeles?" I said, "I really don't know." He said, "Well, do you have any money?" I said, "Not really." He said, "Well, do you have a car?" I said, "Yeah, I have a car." He said, "Do you have a place to live?" And I said, "Well, temporarily." I really had nothing. And he said, "Well, what are you going to do?" And I said, "I don't know." And that's how I came to LA. I had no idea what I was going to do. I had no money. I had a car and a place I could live for a while. And it just so happened that, fate as it will be, the first show I got was New Zoo Review, which I played an 85-year-old mailman, and that sustained me for about 3 or 4 or 5 months. It was a children's show, and I was doing it on the Warner Brothers lot. And then I came home one day, and somebody said, Merv Griffin would like to talk to you about, I'd done his show as a singer. And when I was on his set, he asked me if I'd like to talk to somebody. It was a different kind of set than Carson. I'd done Carson as well as a singer. But when you sat on Merv's couch, it was like you were all involved in everybody's, participation and so on. And so I talked quite a bit and listened quite a bit. So at the end of the show, he said to me, "Would you like to go back and meet some gentlemen that run my business for me?" I had no idea. I thought he was just a talk show host. I had no idea he was a $35 million a year, radio, television empire. And so I said, "Sure." So I went back, and as he reached for the door, he looked at me and he said, "Did you ever think about being a game show host?" And I honestly didn't. It kind of came out of nowhere. And I thought to myself, I swear this is what went through my mind. I didn't say it, but I thought, a game show host. That's a guy with a bad mustache and a bad jacket that cares nothing about what you have to say. And I immediately said, "No, but I'd like to think about it." So he went into his office and he explained that Jeopardy had run out with NBC. Their contract had run out. And NBC, they'd done it a year early, and NBC owed him a half an hour for a year, or at least 13 weeks. And he said, "We're working on a new show, and I think you might be interested, and we might be interested in having you host it." And I said, "Well, what's it called?" He said, "Well, it's called Shopper's Bazaar." I said, "Okay." So I went through all the meetings with, 5 people on the staff with the chalkboard, and we were running down this show that eventually morphed into Wheel of Fortune.
Let's take a look at our Wheel of Fortune. Top dollar value on the wheel at the first round, $750. But look out for this black space bankrupt, because if you hit that, you lose all your cash, but not your merchandise, because once you buy a prize, it's yours to keep. Let's take a look at our first puzzle.
So here I was with a 7-year contract with the #1 show in the country.
Shopper's Bazaar, the pilot, is on YouTube. Have you ever gone back and watched how the show evolved?
I never watched myself on television. The only time I've ever watched myself on television, there's one story involved with this, and one involves a dancer. And the dancer is, who was the most famous dancer of the 30s? What was his name? Fred Astaire.
Fred Astaire.
Right, with Ginger Rogers. And he was on the Carson show one night, and Carson said this to him, and I never forgot it. He said, "Well, Fred, you've done, how many movies? 60, 80, 90 movies?" "Yeah, yeah." He said, "Well, do you ever watch them?" He said, "No." He said, "You mean to tell me that you've never seen one of your movies?" He said, "No, never have." He said, "Well, when you go to the premiere, don't you watch it then?" He said, "No, I go to the premiere. I sit down on my seat. When the lights go out, I go home." He said, "I can't believe that." He said, "Look, Johnny, this is how I look at it. That movie is what I did. I'm concerned about more what I'm going to do." So that locked in on me, and I thought, that's an interesting way to look at life. Don't worry about where you've been. Keep your eyes focused on where you're going to go and what you're going to do. So I never watched myself on television, with the exception of if I was on vacation sometimes, and I swear to you this happened to me over and over again. I would happen to be switching through channels if I was skiing somewhere, and all of a sudden Love Connection would pop up. And I would watch myself, and I promise you, this is exactly what I thought. I would look at myself and go, that is one funny SOB. Hey, that is hysterical. It was like me watching somebody else and thinking how funny I was. It was the weirdest thing. That's the only time I've ever seen myself on television.
You were very self-deprecating. You made fun of yourself a lot.
Well, I tried to beat everybody to the punch because I was so inadequate at times.
Do you think that was because you really never wanted to be a game show host or strived for it?
It's just who I am. You know, it's really funny. I can just addressing that. It's interesting you bring that up. Jeff Goldstein was my director on Wheel of Fortune. And he said to me one day, he said, you know, you're the only guy I've ever been with on television who makes a mistake and then points it out to everybody and then points it out again. He said, what's the story on you? I said, well, everybody makes mistakes. Nobody's perfect, except game show hosts are supposed to be perfect, but we're not. And so it's just who I am.
Did you get what you wanted for Christmas?
No, considering I'm Jewish.
Oh, did you get what you wanted for... Just skim over that, but I got to give it. That was good. That was good, Jeez, Aaron. Yeah. Well, what'd you get for Hanukkah?
Nothing yet. It's not that time of the year yet.
Oh, good.
Many of the shows, Wheel of Fortune being one of them at the time, a lot of these shows don't exist anymore. NBC destroyed the tapes. Did you ever save any of this stuff while you were? I'm assuming the answer is no, since you never watched yourself.
No, I didn't save any of it. And Wheel of Fortune is kind of interesting because it was a time when they had these tapes of the shows that I did, and they would just tape over them. So they never saved them. They never held them for archives, where today they hold everything for an archive and then rerun it in syndication.
You mentioned Love Connection. Before there was The Bachelor, before there was Love is Blind or Too Hot to Handle on Netflix, there was Love Connection. Single people now use dating apps to swipe left and right all the time. Do you think the original swipe left or swipe right?
Love Connection was, I don't know, I always thought it was really interesting. I always felt like I was not the host, but just somebody kind of overview. I felt more like the audience, and I think that I handled it kind of like the audience. What would the audience ask? How would the audience feel? And I think I didn't try, but I portrayed that through my sometimes facial expressions, sometimes my questions, sometimes, my answers to them. But it was fun. It really was fun. I mean, I think I had probably two of the most beautiful people on earth on my show. The guy was like right off the cover of GQ, and the woman was just stunning, and they hated each other. I mean, just absolutely hated each other. And I couldn't get my head around it. I struggled for that 15 minutes that I was with him thinking, what's going on here? And I asked this guy, I said, look, you and I are looking at the same thing. This woman is off the charts gorgeous. He said, I've seen better looking legs than a bucket of chicken. I'll never forget him saying that.
On the air?
Oh yeah, on the air. Yeah, that's somewhere in the world of Love Connection. I'm not sure where that is.
Love Connection is airing again in reruns in Canada. Have you gotten the royalty checks yet from those airings?
No, I didn't even know about it.
Surprise, Chuck.
So I'm on television again in Canada?
They're airing the first season of Love Connection in Canada.
So it's kind of interesting. A lot of people wonder where 2 and 2 came from because that became my signature. I mean, people try to invent a signature. Mine just kind of invented itself. So I had a guy come up to me, I guess in the first year, and said, we got a break. And I said, look, I got to do something. I got to make a phone call. Do I have time? And he said, actually, you have 2 minutes in and 2 seconds out, so you don't. And so when I went to commercial on that mid-break, I said, well, we'll be back in 2 minutes and 2 seconds. And that turned into 2 and 2. So then we were number 1 in Australia. And I was getting these letters, and I got this one letter from this nice woman who couldn't understand that I seemed like a very nice young man. And why would I do this thing? And apparently this is not a good thing to do in Britain or Australia. I don't know what it means, but it has a very negative connotation. So here I was going like this all day long and finishing at this point. And so that was about the only criticism I got for it. It was from Australia, but it became my signature. Now, even today, I see people now go, hey, Chuck, 2 and 2. Yep.
Just a few short months after Love Connection premieres, you get the gig hosting Scrabble. You have two shows at once. Did you at that point just feel like the luckiest host in show business?
No, I really didn't think that. Again, we don't work that hard. So when I was doing Love Connection along with Scrabble, I think I was working a total of, oh gosh, how many days? It was just nothing. I mean, it really wasn't. It wasn't difficult at all. Not a bad schedule. Scrabble was something that was requested. Reg Grundy, oddly enough, from Australia, had that show, and he'd seen me on Wheel and Love Connection, and called NBC and said, you know, this is who I'd like to have host the show. So it was a fait accompli. It was just a matter of negotiations, and when those were done, I was on the air with Scrabble right away. Scrabble was a great game. It really was. Lingo was a great game. Lingo wasn't the game that it was when it started in Sweden, I think, or someplace like that. But when we got through with it, it was just a really solid, good word game.
I always liked the connection you had on camera with Shandy. But you guys always seemed so natural.
Oh, you know, we were such good friends. We still are today. Shandy was just a great girl.
Wheel and Scrabble, both taped at NBC in Burbank, along with Johnny Carson, iconic shows.
Right across the hall.
Right across. It's amazing. Can you just paint a picture of what it was like at the NBC commissary having lunch?
I did have one time when I ran into Carson. I knew him. You know, he was one of the first shows I ever did as a singer. And we knew each other. I knew Ed McMahon pretty well. And so one day at the end of Scrabble, a girl came up to me and she said, we want to do a photo shoot. And I said, you know, look, I've been doing this for 12 hours now. This is not the time to do a photo shoot. We'll do it in the morning when I come to work, not now. She said, well, we really need you to do this photo shoot. Now, there's no one on most men, I think, I don't think I can put myself in a category that doesn't exist, but I think most men don't like to have their pictures taken. I mean, women love it. Men, I don't think, are that crazy about it. So I'm thinking, how can I avoid this shoot? I'm not going to do this. I'll do it. What can I do? If I go to my dressing room, they'll find me. I got to hide someplace. So I went to the restroom that was for everybody in all the studios that were on that floor. It was like the general public restroom. And I went in there, and I'm standing around. I've washed my hands about 3 or 4 times. I noticed when I walk in, there's shoes underneath one of the booths with the door closed. And so I'm washing my hands and talking to myself and thinking, you know, I hope I don't get caught. I hope nobody comes in here. I don't want to do this shoot. And I'm not saying it out loud. I'm kind of whispering under my breath. Finally, no flushing, no nothing. The door just opens and Carson walks out. And he looks at me and said, what in the hell are you doing in here? I thought you would never leave. And I said, I'm trying to avoid a photo shoot. He said, so am I. That's a true story.
So the photo shoot never happened?
No, the photo shoot never happened until the next morning when we wanted it to happen.
Oh, my gosh. That's
later on in the afternoon when he came to work.
Let's fast forward a little bit, Chuck, because I want to go to like 1999, 2000, when game shows, including Greed, made just a massive comeback on television, but they looked different. They felt different. They weren't that 22-minute compact show.
Now, I remember the first time we did 2 shows because it was an arduous. It was a 5-camera show with all kinds of swinging cameras up here and lights, and I think I was at that time in the podium. I had to be a good 50 yards away from the contestants. I mean, it was just a massive studio. And my son, Michael, who was, I guess Michael was like 9, and he'd come over with me in the limo, and it's starting to get a little bit late. And we're into the second show, and I get a break, and I walked over to Michael, and he's sitting next to the limo driver that brought us over, and I said, look, would you mind taking him home? He's got to go to school tomorrow, and this is pretty late evening for him. And Michael looked at me, and he said, no, I'm not going home. And he's never done that. I mean, he always went, yeah, Dad, you know, whatever's right. And he said, I'm not going home. And I said, why? He said, this is like the greatest thing I've ever seen in my life. I love this. And I thought, holy cow, if a 9-year-old thinks that, I must have something really great on my hands.
Chuck, that sound means time is running out, so it's time for our lightning round, Chuck. This is very easy. You're clearly very excited about this.
I'm good at this, yeah.
I'm going to name, this is so simple because it's all about you. I'm going to name a show that you did. All you have to do is tell me the first thing that comes to your mind, if it's a phrase, a blooper, anything at all. Are you ready?
Well, I hope it's interesting. Okay.
All right, first one, The Chuck Woolery Show.
Oh, skateboard.
The Dating Game.
It's okay.
Lingo.
Great. Loved everything about it. Loved the balls. Loved everything. If somebody said, what do you like most? I said, well, never mind.
Home and Family.
Interesting experience on the lot of Universal.
And finally, my favorite show, Scrabble.
Scrabble was just one of those shows that should still be on the air today with or without me. It was that good and still is that good.
By the way, were the red balls on Lingo called stoppers as a throwback to Scrabble?
Yes, they were. They were called lots of things, but stoppers was one of them, yes. We had more comments on the balls in Lingo that you can even imagine.
We're getting down to the end of our interview, but of course we want to talk about what you're doing now. You're a very busy man, Chuck. Tell everybody about this podcast, Blunt Force Truth.
Well, about, I don't know, maybe 9 years ago, a friend of mine said, you really should come out as a conservative you are. You've hidden it for 45 years. And I said, I can't do that. If I do, half the people hate me and then half the people love me, but I'll divide my audience right in half. Why should I do that? He said, because it's the right thing to do. So he convinced me into doing it, and now I'm hated by most of the people in Hollywood who know me.
Love you or hate you. You have more followers on Twitter than any game show legend I've ever met.
Well, thank you. I really, they shadow ban me because they don't like my views, and they've blocked me they put me in Twitter toilet a few times, but I'm a little outspoken. I mean, it's really funny. I used to do a lot of Fox News, and I used to do morning, and I would be on Neil Cavuto's show and people like that. I'm not welcome back there anymore. And it's disheartening to a certain extent, but I guess I'm a little hyperbolic for them. I don't know. Maybe. I may be a little hyperbolic for everybody. I have no idea.
Well, you're welcome back here on Hosts at Home anytime. And
thank you, Adam.
Got to mention the day job because I host Nashville Insider and syndication.
Yes.
I want to interview you at some point on television because I want to talk to you about duetting with Dolly Parton because that's really cool.
Oh, man, it was one of the highlights of my life, and I didn't know it until after it happened.
Chuck, thank you so much for being with us.
I got to sing with Dolly Parton.
That's amazing.
How cool is that?
And that also lives on YouTube.
It does live on YouTube. I know. Yeah.
Richard Malmus is here now to tell us who's on next week's show. Richard.
Next time on Hosts at Home, the legend of the famed host of Legends of the Hidden Temple. On our next show, Kirk Fogg gives you the scoop on what happened in front and behind the cameras at Nickelodeon Studios. That's next time. And watching won't even cost you a pendant of life. Back over to you, Adam.
Thanks, Richard. One thing we always do on Hosts at Home, I don't say goodbye. That goes to our guest of honor. Chuck Woolery has been on the show. Chuck, over to you.
Listen, thanks everybody for listening. Thank you, Adam, for having me on the show. And we'll see you next time on, we'll see you in 2 and 2. How is that? Oh, 2 and 2 on Hosts at Home.